When was the last time you sat in complete silence, without reaching for your phone, without checking a message, without some voice filling the space around you? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be alone, truly alone, with nothing but your own thoughts? Most people can't even remember, and when they try, a strange kind of discomfort settles in, an uneasiness, as though the quiet itself might reveal something you don't want to hear. You live in a world drowning in noise, a world engineered to keep your mind occupied every second it's awake. Endless scrolling, constant updates, background playlists, and the buzz of artificial connection pretending to be intimacy. We're surrounded by 1,000 distractions designed to make sure you never have to face the one thing modern society quietly fears most: yourself. This isn't a harmless side effect of technology. It's not a coincidence. It's a system, a carefully constructed environment where silence is dangerous and solitude is seen as a problem to be solved. Because in the stillness, things rise to the surface. Questions you've buried, insecurities you've ignored, truths about your own existence that don't quite align with the comforting narratives you've been fed since childhood. In silence, you start to notice the cages you've built around yourself. And so we drown it out. We reach for anything: a screen, a song, a meaningless conversation about someone else's life, to avoid the unbearable weight of our own unfiltered consciousness. Noise becomes a drug. It numbs the ache of meaninglessness. It gives us a way to exist without ever really being present. But what if this addiction to distraction wasn't just a side effect of modern life? What if it was a form of control? Because a distracted mind doesn't question, a restless person doesn't rebel. When you're constantly reacting, constantly consuming, you have no time, no space to create anything of your own. You can't question the world if you're too busy chasing the next notification. You can't build your mind if you never sit in the quiet long enough to hear it. And yet there have always been those who chose to step away. Those who understood that the real power doesn't belong to the ones who shout the loudest, but to those who learn to be alone, to those who master silence and make it their ally. One of them was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche believed that isolation wasn't a curse, it was a crucible, that solitude wasn't the absence of connection, but the birthplace of strength. He walked away, not in bitterness, but in pursuit of something higher. A self not defined by others, a voice not drowned in the chorus of conformity. And perhaps in a world addicted to noise, the first act of rebellion is to turn it off, to leave the crowd behind, to sit in defiance in the unflinching silence, and listen to yourself. Take a moment right now and think about the last time you spent time alone, completely uninterrupted. How did it feel? What thoughts or emotions came up? Comment down below and share your thoughts. Have you ever felt a quiet kind of power in being alone? A sense that solitude reveals a version of you no one else gets to see? Or perhaps it terrifies you, because in that silence, there's no one left to blame, no crowd to dissolve into, and no distractions. What am I? What do I truly want? And why does it scare me so much to find out? Most people fear solitude because it forces them to confront the questions they would rather ignore. In a world obsessed with validation, applause, and fitting in, real growth happens when you step away from the crowd and face yourself. Not as someone defined by others, but as an individual, raw and unfiltered. Society often pushes you toward conformity, telling you what to think, how to act, who to be. It's a survival mechanism, yes, but it's also a trap. The comfort of belonging comes at a cost. It dulls your individuality, your authenticity. Without realizing it, you might trade your true self for acceptance. But when all of that fades away, the distractions, the noise, the endless opinions, what's left? That's where your real transformation can begin. True personal growth doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from stepping out. When you separate yourself from the external influences, you gain the power to create your own values, your own meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and meaningless. This isn't about rejecting society altogether, but about reclaiming your mind, your choices, your agency. This kind of transformation is uncomfortable. It requires facing silence, discomfort, and the fears you usually distract yourself from. But the beauty of solitude is that it forces you to look at yourself, to confront the parts you've been avoiding, and to begin shaping the person you want to be, free from the expectations of others. Solitude isn't a punishment. It's an act of defiance, a powerful way to break free from the noise and start building a life that's entirely yours. In a world that's constantly pulling you in 1,000 different directions, choosing to be alone is one of the most radical and empowering decisions you can make. This is where your journey toward true self-mastery begins. In an era of constant connectivity, relentless comparison, and manufactured outrage, solitude is more radical and more necessary than ever. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable it feels to be truly alone with your own thoughts? Not just alone in a room, but alone in your mind. No phone, no music, no distractions, just the echo of your own consciousness. Most people can't stand it. In fact, a series of modern psychology experiments revealed something astonishing. When placed in a room without any stimuli, many participants preferred to administer mild electric shocks to themselves rather than sit in silence with their own minds. Think about that for a moment. Given a choice between mild physical pain and complete solitude with one's thoughts, people chose the pain. Why is that? It's not the silence itself that terrifies us. It's what waits on the other side of that silence. It's the old memories you buried years ago, the mistakes you refuse to acknowledge, the anxieties about a future you can't control, the quiet truths about who you really are beneath the carefully constructed personality you present to the world. And when all the noise fades, those things rise to the surface. Modern society is built on distraction, endless scrolling, constant notifications, binge-worthy content, fast food information designed to keep your mind busy but empty. It's no accident. From the moment you wake up, you're conditioned to fill every quiet moment with something external. Because the more you distract yourself, the less you confront the deeper, more uncomfortable realities of your existence. Realities about what you want, what you've lost, and what you're too afraid to chase. And this isn't just about personal discomfort. It's about control. Introspection is dangerous. The systems of power that shape your world, from governments to corporations to social hierarchies, rely on people being too distracted, too busy, and too anxious to look within. Because when you do, you start asking difficult questions. Questions about why you follow rules you didn't choose, why you chase things you don't need, and why you believe stories about yourself that were written by others. A mind that sits in silence long enough inevitably begins to rebel. This is why the ancient philosophers sought isolation in nature, why mystics withdrew to mountaintops, why great thinkers throughout history documented moments of clarity that came not in the middle of chaos, but in the middle of absolute stillness. Because in those rare, unguarded moments, you confront yourself honestly. You realize how much of your fear is inherited, how much of your anger is misdirected, how many of your ambitions aren't even yours to begin with. But here's the paradox. What most people run from is the very thing that can set them free. When you stop filling the void and start listening to what's inside it, you begin to reclaim your mind. You start to wield solitude like a weapon, a tool for clarity, resilience, and power. Because a person who's no longer afraid of their own thoughts is a person no system can easily manipulate. And in a world built on keeping you distracted, mastering isolation isn't just a personal achievement, it's an act of quiet rebellion. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unravel why your mind resists silence, how those fears were carefully implanted, and how you can use solitude not as a punishment, but as a path to reclaiming your inner strength. Because if you can master being alone with your thoughts, you can master anything. Why do you always feel like the quietest people in the room are the ones you should be paying the most attention to? There's something about them, an unsettling calm, a sense that while others are busy performing for attention, they're watching, thinking, quietly dissecting everything. And maybe somewhere deep down, you felt that about yourself too. An instinct to withdraw, to disappear from the noise. And the world has probably tried to convince you that this is a flaw, that if you're not loud, if you're not constantly seen, you're somehow failing at life. But what if I told you that history tells a different story? What if the very instinct you've been told to suppress is actually your greatest weapon? For centuries, the loners, the introverts, the misfits, the ones who never quite fit into the manic rhythm of society, have been quietly pulling the strings of human progress. Nikola Tesla, a man so reclusive he once claimed to converse with pigeons, was responsible for inventing the modern world as we know it. Emily Dickinson, whose brilliance was locked away in a single bedroom, redefined poetry and the nature of introspection. Even Isaac Newton, perhaps the greatest mind in human history, spent years in solitary study during the plague, laying the foundations of modern physics. These weren't the charismatic leaders on public stages or the magnetic personalities at lavish parties. These were people who thrived in the stillness, who found power in what the world called weakness, who understood that to truly see reality, you sometimes have to step away from it. And here's the paradox no one talks about. While society glamorizes extroverted charisma, the influencers, the loudest voices, the public performers, it quietly depends on those it overlooks. Every ideology, every technological revolution, every disruptive idea that ever reshaped human history didn't come from the crowd. It came from a mind in isolation. The ones who sit alone in their rooms, staring into the abyss of their own thoughts, are the ones who see the world as it truly is, not as it pretends to be. They spot the cracks beneath the surface, the illusions others are too distracted to notice. And it's in those cracks where new realities are born. This isn't to say extroverts don't play their role. They do. But it's the thinkers behind the scenes, the ones who write the scripts before the actors ever step onto the stage, who hold the real power. The dangerous minds aren't the ones shouting in the streets. They're the ones silently watching, quietly planning, and patiently waiting for their moment to strike. So if you've ever felt out of place in a world obsessed with noise, you're not broken. You're not failing. You might just be one of those minds. And history suggests that it's exactly people like you who shape the future. Not through constant visibility, but through rare, calculated, and devastatingly brilliant moments of insight. In a society engineered to celebrate visibility, your invisibility is your camouflage, your silence, a form of resistance. And when you finally choose to act, the world won't see you coming. Have you ever wondered what it might feel like to completely disappear, to log out, turn it all off, and slip into a kind of beautiful invisibility where no one expects anything from you? No one knows what you're thinking, and no one can reach you. What if silence, not noise, not attention, was the most powerful thing you could claim in a world that demands your constant performance? We live inside what philosophers might call a digital panopticon, a place where you are always visible, even when you think you aren't. Every post, every like, every harmless comment, quietly recorded, cataloged, and fed into an invisible network that studies you more carefully than you study yourself. You are observed not by one authoritarian figure, but by a faceless crowd. Friends, strangers, algorithms. Attention has become the currency of self-worth and silence. Silence feels like death. But what if silence isn't passive? What if choosing disconnection, choosing not to reply, not to post, not to perform, was an act of rebellion? Imagine for a moment logging out and letting the world forget you. Not forever, just long enough to remember who you are when no one's watching. It's a concept as old as humanity itself. Ancient Stoic philosophers like Epictetus believed that a person's mind was not truly their own until it could endure solitude. Samurai warriors practiced seclusion before battle, not out of fear, but to sharpen the edges of their awareness. Monks withdrew into the silence of mountain temples, not to escape life, but to see it more clearly. In their emptiness, they discovered something modern people rarely touch: sovereignty of thought. Friedrich Nietzsche, who despised the conformism of mass opinion, warned against the intoxicating pull of herd morality. He believed that most people live by ideas inherited from the mob, clinging to the safety of consensus. In this sense, silence isn't just a quiet moment, it's a rejection of consensus. It's the refusal to let the crowd decide what matters to you. Today's silence has become countercultural. To disconnect is to resist a system designed to monetize your attention and emotions. And that's what makes it so powerful. It isn't cowardice or laziness. It's a deliberate, defiant refusal to be predictable, to reclaim, if only for a moment, the terrifying, beautiful responsibility of being alone with your own mind. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. The endless chatter of external validation fades. The need to explain yourself dissolves, and what remains is you. Have you ever wondered what might happen if you stopped chasing every notification, every headline, every fleeting opinion disguised as truth, and simply sat with yourself? Not out of boredom, not as a punishment, but as an intentional act. Most people fear silence because it strips away the illusions that comfort them. But in that silence, something extraordinary can begin. Isolation, if misunderstood, can easily morph into loneliness. But when approached consciously, it becomes a sanctuary, a space where the noise of the world fades and the quiet voice within grows louder. In a world engineered to fracture your attention and keep you endlessly reactive, choosing to be alone is one of the most subversive acts you can commit. Start small, set boundaries with your digital life. Not as a trendy detox, but as a deliberate statement. My attention belongs to me. Limit the ceaseless scroll, the curated feeds that subtly tell you who to be, what to want, and how to think. Without realizing it, we become the products of algorithms, not of intention. By stepping away, even briefly, you begin to reclaim the most precious resource you possess, your focus. Practice intentional silence, not just the absence of sound, but the absence of input. No music, no podcasts, no conversations. Let the stillness become a mirror. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. That discomfort is not a flaw in you. It's the residue of a life too entangled in distraction. Stay with it. Notice what surfaces. The fears, the memories, the unprocessed grief, the dormant ambitions, all the things the noise helped you avoid. Right. Not for likes, not for approval, but for yourself. Journaling isn't about producing wisdom. It's about excavating the raw, unedited parts of you that rarely see daylight. Write badly, write honestly. Let the page hold your contradictions. Over time, you'll begin to see patterns, unearth truths you didn't know you carried, and most importantly, you'll begin to hear your own voice again. Most importantly, face the discomfort without reaching for a distraction. In those moments when the emptiness feels heavy, remember what Nietzsche believed, that one must first master the chaos within before attempting to master anything in the external world. Solitude isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting humanity. It's about cultivating the strength to exist without constant approval, to be at peace without noise, to define yourself in a world desperate to do it for you. This isn't easy, and it's not supposed to be. But on the other side of that discomfort is a version of you that isn't shaped by trends or algorithms or herd morality. It's a version forged in the quiet, in the struggle, in the honest confrontation with who you are when no one's watching. That's where transformation begins. In a world engineered to drown you in noise, the rarest skill is the ability to master yourself, not the curated, performative version you project onto others, but the unfiltered, raw self that only reveals itself in silence. While most people will spend their lives chasing distractions, clinging to fleeting validation, and performing for invisible audiences, a handful will choose a different path, a quieter, lonelier, but infinitely more powerful one. Because here's the secret no one tells you. Everything you're looking for exists beyond distraction. Strength, clarity, meaning, peace. None of these are found in applause. They're forged in solitude. They're built in the empty hours when no one's watching, when the world forgets you exist, and you have no one left to impress but yourself. While others chase noise, you will cultivate silence. While they frantically seek the next thing to fill the void, you will sit with the void, learn its language, and turn it into an ally. While the masses lose themselves in the flicker of screens and the endless scroll of artificial significance, you will quietly sharpen your mind, dissect your weaknesses, and reconstruct yourself piece by piece. True power isn't loud, it isn't showy, It isn't built on followers, likes, or public approval. It lives in obscurity. It grows in the shadows. It belongs to those who understand that the greatest form of rebellion isn't screaming against the world. It's building yourself into someone the world cannot control. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a celebrity, not as a politician, but as a solitary figure, crafting their own values, transcending herd morality, quietly rewriting the rules of existence while the rest of the world wasn't paying attention. That archetype still exists, not in the bright lights of popularity, but in the quiet spaces where discomfort becomes discipline, where isolation becomes enlightenment, and where a person, alone with their thoughts, transforms into something untouchable. And that can be you. The question isn't whether the world is distracting, it always will be. The question is whether you have the courage to step away from the performance, sit in the silence, and meet the person you were always meant to become. Because while the crowd will forever chase noise, the ones who master themselves in solitude will quietly inherit the future. If this video resonated with you, embrace the power of silence and start mastering yourself today. Like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Comment below, how has isolation shaped your journey?